everyone within themselves, there's two wolves that are constantly fighting each other. Who wins is the one that you feed the most.
There are a lot of things that prevent people from even realizing that they have a problem.
With this fear, with this struggle, and this difficult process, I feel that it sets you free afterwards. Because you just don't fear the same thing anymore.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Human Library Podcast, episode 7. Yay. We're very excited about this episode because, as you may be already seeing, this is the virtual set that we have for you guys. It's the first time we're actually doing this. So, as I said before, we're very excited because we want to give you, the best type of quality broadcasting and audio and experience that we can offer regarding our topics and the discussions that we're having in the Human Library. You may know also this already, but this is the reason because our beautiful soul Mehdi is transitioned to like a better professional and personal future. He's no longer anymore with us physically here. So this is the type of set that we're actually recurring to. And we actually hope you love it, guys, and you enjoy it as much as we do, filming, recording, and having fun with this. So no longer delaying, I'm gonna give the ball to my beautiful Mehdi over there, so he can actually start telling you the topic about this podcast.
Let's go.
Yay.
Okay. Beautiful Mehdi is not what you said before the recording, but that's fine. Let's just keep it like this. I like it for now. Okay, so today's podcast, it's a very interesting one. I think when I found this topic in the beginning, I was like, that's very interesting. Not to tease anymore, the topic is the fear of greatness, or the fear of reaching greatness. And there is a concept by Abraham Maslow that is called the Jonah Complex that I'm gonna expand on it, and then the conversation is gonna go about how do we feel what we feel, what are the reasons, and how to overcome it. So normally how people associate their fear of not doing something is by thinking about failure. We normally think that we don't want to start a project or a business because we fear that we're going to lose our resources, we're going to lose our money, we're going to invest all our time in a project that maybe the outcome is not guaranteed. Maybe we're basically just afraid of failure. We are afraid of failing. But there is another perspective or a school of thought that is, we fear our success. We fear our greatness or reaching our highest possibilities. And it might give you some trouble in the beginning to understand it, like, how am I fearing my own success? My successes should be a motivator, should drive me to actually perform, not to sabotage myself. And it's a form of self-sabotage, obviously, that we didn't discuss in the first episode just because we wanted to have it separated. But the Jonah Complex. Okay, what is the Jonah Complex? The Jonah Complex is a concept by Abraham Maslow, and it's a reference to the biblical character or prophet Jonah. Oftenly, we just know Jonah, this prophet who got swallowed by a whale or a big fish. But the Jonah Complex, it's a reference to the story behind this process, or him trying to escape his prophecy, because he was assigned as a prophet. He was asked by God to go to Nineveh and present his prophecy, or whatever the biblical version is. But his first intention was, okay, I'm not gonna do that, I'm just gonna escape. And then he got swallowed by the fish. So the moral of the story is, obviously, he afterwards became a prophet and he did his prophecy. So that's the first stage in which you think about something and you have this kind of fear of reaching a specific result, and then the whale or the big fish, I think about it more as the unconscious. So that's like he spent like 3 days or a period of time in his unconscious to think about his decision of escaping, and then he overcame that and he went back to the prophecy. Obviously, that's how we want to interpret this idea, not from the standpoint of religion, but from a psychological perspective in how Abraham Maslow presented the idea. And I want to quote just Abraham Maslow so we can have an idea, and that's from his book, The Farther Reaches of Human Nature. We fear our highest possibilities, as well as our lowest ones. We are generally afraid to become that which we can glimpse in our most perfect moments. Under the most perfect conditions, under conditions of greatest courage, we enjoy and even thrill to the godlike possibilities we see in ourselves in such peak moments. And yet, we simultaneously shiver with weakness and fear before these very same possibilities. So that might give you an visualization of this Jonah complex. It's fear in greatness or fear in success. But we want to dive deep into what are the reasons behind this fear. What are the actual reasons? And I actually want to ask you, from your personal experience, what would be the reason behind someone fearing to reach this kind of highest possibility or success?
Yeah, I think I can jump in with that. So the one thing that I found interesting when you were talking about the story of Jonah was I kind of broke it down in my head into like three more or less like points where like you're existing, you're living your life, you're challenged by, well, because this is an archetypal story, you're challenged by kind of like the spirit or like the world kind of, if you interpret it in a psychological way, let's say, you can be challenged by life itself, right? Like the most difficult challenge, let's say, right? It's kind of like taking things to the maximum. And there's a point where it's like a struggle point. And in this case, let's say you're in a whale, right? There comes the point where you're going through, well, in this case, the whale can be thought of also like the underworld or like you're unconscious or something, which
The
also
shadow.
yeah, exactly. However you interpret that, it's this point of struggle, and then you come out of it, right? Like you actually, which, and then the story has the narrative of like you have, like, it's good to face the challenges of life, and even better to triumph and overcome them, right? So I think that's kind of how I took the story, which I think is very cool, because I think in everyday life, you know, I think almost everyone faces, to a certain degree, I think there are degrees of this. I would say like you could say greatness, or just like smaller challenges of life or bigger challenges of life, right? So but I think at the end of the day, if you're facing head on the challenge of life, even smaller challenges, right? That you think that, oh, it's nothing, you know, like it's I'll just do it tomorrow or whatever. You can close your eyes on it, especially in a culture which is very, very, it makes it easier to do that, you know, with things like social media, addictive technologies, the diets that are not optimal for like having lots of energy to do to like just live life to the fullest. I think it's especially easy to do that, and you can ignore these things, and then they build up over time, where it becomes like, okay, you get swallowed by a whale, you know. Like so I think that's also another angle you could look at it. But in terms of, I think maybe I already touched on a couple of reasons why people can end up in that kind of a situation, of like being afraid of success or being afraid of greatness, which I think a huge part of it is unconsciousness of your behaviors. So people who are afraid of greatness, as we say, or people who are afraid to face the challenges of life in various domains, I think one of the biggest components is being unconscious of it. So like you don't know that you're ignoring certain things. You don't know that you're repressing things, or there are lots of defense mechanisms for this, like repressing thoughts, projecting, compulsive activity to distract oneself, self-medicating with alcohol or drugs, avoiding situations that can trigger that thought that you're ignoring something important in your life.
Keep putting yourself down at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think actually Jung has a very good quote about this. And this is something that I need to probably introduce the topic of neurosis, because I think this is what I'm kind of touching on right now. It's something that modern people a lot of times suffer from, and I think myself included, I have been suffering, and maybe I am to a certain degree still. But being aware of it helps, and that's it's a neurotic person is basically, or neurosis, it's a condition where a person is kind of unconsciously avoiding facing challenges of life, or like just living life to the fullest, basically. I think definition is a psychological disorder defined by persistent and deep level of anxiety and overall fear of life. And it's very broad, but one of the things that Carl Jung said, a neurosis is the agony of a human soul in all of its vast complexity.
Fuck.
And that's something that he mentioned that I found interesting, where it kind of relates to that a little bit. As soon as you said that a minute ago, I was like, okay, that's kind of what it is, like being trapped in a constantly shrinking place, where you're like feeling guilty about the things that you're not doing, and it's like a weird cycle that you're getting stuck in.
Of mental punishment as well, right?
Yeah.
Like yourself, just like
Yeah.
punishing yourself for not like exceeding your expectations, but at the same time not allowing you to exceed them.
Yeah.
So it's a weird like vicious cycle of like, you have to do this, but I'm not gonna allow you to do it anyways.
Yeah.
So you're gonna feel bad about not doing it,
Yeah.
about not like reaching them. At the same time, I'm gonna give you the option or the ability to do the work to reach them. That is crazy.
Yeah.
Like hearing the story that Mehdi just said, it reminded me a little bit as well as Pinocchio. You remember this, when he's like this wood boy, this boy made of wood.
Yeah.
Like he's trying to become a real boy.
Yeah.
Like in part of his journey, he actually gets swallowed by a whale.
Yeah.
And he's trying to figure out how to leave the whale to actually continue his journey to become a real boy. So in a certain aspect is the entirety of everyone's journey, right? To reach their superhuman, like Nietzsche said, the Übermensch. Maybe I butchered that a little bit, but that's the whole idea, right? Like,
but you remember also the thing is he gets trapped in the whale because he's rescuing his father.
Yeah.
So that's an important.
He's creator.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Yeah.
Because technically speaking, he's not his father. He's someone that made him up, like carved him up.
Yeah.
That's also an interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I believe in a certain aspect, or something I have felt within myself, like looking backwards in my life, is that there's always like two versions of yourself, right? There's like this like Native American legend or story that I say that everyone within themselves, there's two wolves that live, that are constantly fighting each other. Who wins is the one that you feed the most. So one is supposed to be the ego, and one is supposed to be your true self. You know what I mean? Like your conscious spirit. And in this perspective, it's also like the little man and the big man. And it's always every day the little man who is like ruling the decisions of your life, because you want to become the big man, like the greatest version of yourself in a certain aspect. But there's always this little man telling you like, you're not ready. Like, no, you need to prepare more, or you're not good enough. This is not your path, actually, man. You should like look over there. It's like just like dragging you constantly down at the same time. Like even when you wake up motivated and you're like, fuck it, today is the day, we're gonna do it. And then you put in the work, you actually like do everything that you're supposed to do, and it may last like a few days, weeks, even a couple of months. But eventually you'll have this little thing behind your head that is always telling you, hey man, I think you've worked hard enough. And you still haven't reached anything like that you imagined, right? So why are you still doing this? You know what I mean, man? This like constant like self-nagging that you're like literally just wasting your life, wasting your time. Like this is not what you're supposed to do. It is a little bit like insane, but it's like the modus operandi of how your mind works. I read something the other day very cool that I would like to share with you in this regards. Is like your mind is not your friend. Someone who's constantly like trying to sabotage yourself, telling you that you're not good enough. Why would you listen to a person like that, right? Then why would you listen to your mind? And it's the whole idea of this fear of actually achieving something that you're supposed to be or you're greater than. You fear this ability of showing yourself, not everyone else, showing yourself that you can actually do it, that you can actually be this individual, to be like great, to be amazing, to be someone that other people can look up to,
Yeah.
that you can look up to yourself. Something that you said maybe as well is like the definition of like something between the fear of failure and the fear of success. I actually wanted to share the definitions, the basic definitions of these two, because they're a feeling that correlate with each other. It's this fear of anxiety. The difference is the energy that you put in them. One is like the energy of, I'm not gonna try it, I'm not gonna do it because I don't wanna fuck it up while doing it. And the other one is like, I don't wanna try it, I don't wanna do it because I don't wanna actually be successful at doing it. But if you think about it, it's literally like the same type of anxious, self-sabotaging energy that one has in himself, just focus on different like endings, so to speak, right? So like the basic definition of fear of success is the concern that once we achieve something new, we'll be incapable of sustaining it or may suffer because of it. Most of the time, we're not aware of this fear. So something that you said as well about neurosis is that it's subconscious. It's something that you're not aware of. Their behaviors, they're like this type of actions that you make without you realizing that you're doing it because of it. You just have this feeling, this fear, and then you're thinking about yourself. But why am I doing this? If I want to achieve this, why am I behaving like this? Why do I talk to myself like that? It's like, yeah, because you have the fear of success, man. It's like you're like, it's also called like success anxiety, success phobia, or achievemophobia. It's like it behaves as a phobia, literally. And then the definition of fear of failure, again, I might be butchering this name because it comes from Greek. It's called atikophobia, which is an intense fear of failure. It comes from the Greek atikes, meaning unfortunate. And people may avoid any situation where they see a potential for failure. For example, an exam, a job interview is like, this is actually a cool example. You're like, okay, I want to change jobs. I want to like change the situation that I feel myself I'm stuck in, or I would just want to change a little bit of something. So like I look for a job and then they're actually like, hey dude, we're interested. Let's do an interview. You're like, fuck. I was expecting them to tell me like no since the beginning. Now that I have a yes, like I'm not good enough, man. I'm not gonna do this. I'm just gonna cancel because I feel sick, because I have a dentist appointment. Like whatever comes in mind, like because you're not good enough. It is this constant self-nagging that you will always have an excuse for not trying to do something that will make you like reach success, or actually you think that like you will fail at it.
Yeah, it's a very interesting, it's a very interesting condition. I really found it interesting what you said about the when you're like preparing for a job interview, like you want to get a job and then you actually get it and you're like, fuck, like what? I think it's a very common thing when you're like unconsciously you do not believe that you can do it, but you feel like you should do it, so you are doing it. But then when the moment comes, you're like, oh fuck, like just like that, now I have to do it. Now it's like it's here. So it's a very interesting thing, and I think, oh man, there's so many things where like Pandora boxes that we're opening right now, because you mentioned something, don't fear your mind is not your friend, which is also very interesting, because that's a kind of a more like Buddhist thing, where you can you think like, okay, if you identify with your thoughts and you think that your mind is you, then you can get in that situation where you have to like contend with your mind, like, oh, my mind is not me, like, it's
You're a slave of your mind.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
in a Buddhist approach, the whole idea is to separate your mind from yourself, exactly as you've been saying.
yeah. So your mind consists of thoughts that are just thoughts. They're not you,
Exactly.
It's but yeah, I don't know if we've been going all over the place, Mehdi. So what what do you think?
Yeah, I do want to comment on many things. First of all, I think, as you mentioned, there's a similar thing between fear of success and fear of failure, and I think it's the dynamics of it. What happens when you fear in either success or failure, and this unconscious conversation or shadow talk that you have with yourself. Because if we look at it from an Adlerian psychology, right? So there is a reason. For example, you mentioned something about, and that's how I interpret what you said, is fear of responsibility. I don't want to reach this level because then I'm going to have a lot of responsibilities. And that's a very valid reason, right? But in the meantime, your subconscious would try to transmit this idea into multiple other excuses, because that's the goal of your mind, is to sabotage you from just being aware that, okay, you have this fear of being responsible, but you need to tackle it from practices or having micro wins, that maybe you're gonna have some confidence in yourself that you can actually be responsible and you got this, basically. So from an Adlerian psychology, you have this goal of sabotaging yourself, and then you develop this lifestyle of, okay, I'm not good enough, or I need to be ready first. And I think I can relate to that. I was stopping myself from doing many things because I used to feel that I'm not ready. But it was not the case, because this first step, I just couldn't do the first step of starting something. I think in general, people, and that's I think a writer said that, I don't remember his name, but humans are driven by two kinds of fears. It's fear of death and fear of life. And what he means by that is, the fear of death is this fear of conforming, of being mediocre, of being a copy, being in this mass society that we discussed before. And this is what also Nietzsche refers to as the last man, right? Is someone who's mediocre, who's just obeying the standards society and not courageous enough to take risk or to work on himself to be the overman, which is his highest possibility. And then there is the fear of life. The fear of life is being different, is standing out, is existing. Existing, in the Latin word, in the etymology, it means standing out or appearing. It doesn't mean just existing, like, thank you for existing, because you're just here. You need to stand out, you need to be unique. Even in literature, you cannot say that someone is uniquer than someone, or who's the uniquest. Everyone is unique. So this terminology of standing out, but then people can choose the easiest version or the easiest fear, which is the fear of death, because it's conforming. Well, everyone is just it's what you see in everyone, just this conformity, being mediocre, not taking the risk, not challenging themselves to be unique. And I think in history there are a lot of examples in that, and why people would have this fear of being different is, look at all the greatest, Da Vinci, Darwin, all
Yeah.
Marcus Aurelius, everyone, all of them were criticized, and in history there are many people who were murdered just because they were different or they were trying to stand out or present new ideas to the society, because society can challenge you as well. They don't want to see you standing out. They want to see you conforming. Yeah. And I think in Abraham's Maslow's explanation is within all of us there's this impulse to achieve greatness. It's on the top of the hierarchy, self-actualization. We are driven to reach our highest possibilities, but then there are a lot of these fears. So the conversation about the shadow that you were guys doing, the shadow conversation or the unconscious, I think that's the second stage. I think there is a list of reasons, and then there is what your shadow tells you, and then there is the process of trying to heal from the shadow conversation or trying to overcome the Jonah Complex. And that was my question. What do you think the reasons are? So we talked about the fear of responsibility, because I think responsibility is a very big fear. And looking at, imagine being responsible like Marcus Aurelius, like being the emperor of Rome and still doing the right thing.
Yeah.
It's very remarkable, because there is the saying, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think Marcus Aurelius is the exception of that. Like, imagine having all this power, this responsibility, and being strong enough, powerful enough, if you're just angry, you can cut people's head, or you can do very immoral things, but you still choose to do the right thing. And I don't think I can match this challenge. So you can imagine this fear of responsibility, of reaching your highest possibility. Imagine being someone like Marcus Aurelius. So that's a very valid reason. I think there is also the fear of solitude, because when you're challenging society and you're challenging your environment and you want to work on yourself, you're probably, first, you're going to be rejected from people, because people, they don't like seeing other versions of you. They like to see the confirming version of you that they like. But when you're working on yourself or you're not available anymore, they also have the same Adlerian psychology of, not this guy is doing this to reach his greatness, but this guy is changing. This guy doesn't like us anymore. This and that. And being different would make you lonely as well. Nietzsche talks about it as well. There is a quote of his is okay. Greatness entails in being different, or something like this. Yeah, that's just the well, the moral of it is that being different challenges your success. It's the same fear of greatness. And I'm asking you again, what do you think the reasons could be of reaching success?
Well, I mean, I was kind of touching on a few things, because I think it depends on a lot of things, because you can be afraid of greatness because of the way you grew up, for example. Parental behaviors can easily be transferred to you as a child. So that's another reason, very simple reason why if there's a model of behavior that you learned from your parents, that you saw this kind of neurotic behavior approach to life from your parents, you're unconsciously most likely going to emulate that. Even though as a child you can be completely like, let's say, pure, or have a kind of default fresh clean slate, you're gonna adopt that kind of approach to life, and then obviously you're gonna have to work on yourself to change that, because you're gonna notice that you're neurotic and all the problems that come with it, basically. Another interesting reason that I found is that I think, and this is something that I think you touched upon kind of indirectly, the world we're living in right now, because we're living in a modern world, and I think that changes the game completely. Now it's so much more, like much easier to um, escape the like responsibility,
Reality.
the reality, like the call, like the challenge of life, and because of the moral system that no longer elevates the virtue of courage and self-reliance. I think it's much easier to avoid that. So like before we even get to the point of like I'm afraid to be great, I'm like I don't even want to go there yet. Like this is
Yeah.
like I'm not even in the world where I can just like go on Instagram. I can just like numb myself with whatever it is, like video games or like alcohol, and I can just completely avoid that. Um, yeah, and that's another thing, excessive use of like alcohol or like recreational drugs, and like the diets. I mean, I think it's kind of more of a bigger problem in America, where the diets that are suboptimal for us to perform at our best, for our mind to be completely clear. There are a lot of things that prevent people from even realizing that they have a problem. It's like the game is set up in a way where you're like, it's just more difficult for you to get to the point where you're like confronted with this conundrum of like, well, like having this much responsibility, how would I behave? Or like, how would I like, or another thing is like with being, having so much responsibility and being really successful, how do you keep doing that? How do you stay at that level and not succumb to temptations and not succumb to um, things that come with that kind of a lifestyle? But in terms of causes, that's kind of what I highlighted for myself. But there's a very interesting thing which I think we can talk about in the cure part, where we talk about how to overcome these things, and it touches a lot on I loved what you said about the individuality and conforming to society's the way what society expects of you, because actually these are two different realms that, depending on who you are as a person and where you are, you need different approaches to how to like overcome this fear of success. Because if you are conforming too much to what society expects of you, you are more normal in some sense. Then you need to work on your individuality. If you are too individualistic, where you're too different to the point where you're maladapted to the society, which also happens, then you need to be more normalized. So there are different approaches, but
The two extremes, right?
but yeah, exactly. But yeah, I don't know if you have any things to add.
I just want to give an example in my personal life, for example. An example in my personal life, for example. I realized a while back that I have some fear of standing out,
Okay.
of being better than someone else or
Okay.
than.
Okay.
So like when it comes to doing tasks at my work or even for myself or like even training at the gym or whatever, I realize that I postpone things. There's a beautiful saying in Spanish that is like mañana, el mañana, which means the tomorrow. So it's always like it took me so long to start again my routine of going back training and doing like 2 trainings a day and actually focusing on my body and eating healthy and stuff. And I was always saying like, no, mañana. I will just postpone it till tomorrow. Or like doing at work, like doing like work projects, be like, hey, man, this is your work project. There's no rush, but like, please get it done, And then it's when I can prove to my boss I'm actually not only capable of doing this project, I'm capable of like intaking more, and that she can trust me in doing this shit. But it will be like, fuck, but man, do you really wanna, like
Yeah.
prove this? Do you really wanna like do this stuff? So I'll be like, yeah, you're right. Tomorrow, mañana, I'll just do it mañana. So it's always this fear of doing things not good, better than you're supposed to do it, and then like being like, yeah, but then they're gonna give me more job, they're gonna give me more work, sorry, they're gonna they're gonna realize that I'm actually better than they thought I was. So like people that are better than me at sparring are gonna come and start like spar with me, and they're gonna kick my ass, and it's gonna be like, like the guys at the gym be like, oh, you're starting to like lift heavier weights. Let's partner up and like let's push each other to our limits. And this kind of like stuff that before I was kind of used to it when I was younger because it was just like more natural. And when like because of life experiences and stuff, like whatever, like this has started to be like a work in progress again for me. So like I think in my personal life, one of the biggest fears of success that I have is literally to show myself that I'm like different in a way, like that I'm better in the way that I am. So I always it's a constant fight because I realized this a way back. It was something that I used to do subconsciously. I wasn't not thinking about it. And then one time I was like, dude, why do you always do this? Like, and then like, like journaling about it, writing my feelings down. And then I realized like, it opened up my eyes. It's like, dude, you're always postponing stuff because you think you're not good enough for it. It's like, fuck, yeah, you're right, man. So like every time this fear appears in my life, I'm always, you're doing this, man. And so for me, one of the fears of success is literally standing out, which is something that both of you actually talked about, and I felt it like deep in my heart because it's like, dude, I empathize with this. I empathize a lot because it's on my daily day thing that I'm working with myself to trying to be better in this, yeah, dude.
I totally relate as well, honestly. Like for me, I think it's there's this thing that I'm just gonna add about like limits because I think that I thought about that because right now in my life it's a point in my life where I can constantly push myself and see at which point like it's gonna be too much or too little, and I think that and this is something that I think is important to mention, because I do kind of think about this more than I normally did before, is what are your limits and what, like, do you have appetite for something or not? Because you can,
ambition, right?
yeah, because you can, and I think I've been at a point where I took too much to the point where I was like, I messed up, like I fucked up, where I took too much, where it was just not feasible for me at a certain point. And I think it's very good to be able to, and I think this is like a key thing, is to know how much you can actually, like how much you can stretch yourself, let's say, take on without it being like counterproductive and you going through some, like, I don't know, like mental breakdown.
Yeah.
Because you can
Anxiety attack.
have this voice in your head like you're not doing enough, you're
Yeah.
you're not living up to your fullest potential. But then if you have and it's important to have like a clear awareness of your situation, and it's very hard. That's another very hard
That
thing.
is very,
It's
very
super
hard, man.
It's super hard, right?
Like how can you be like, because also like talking a little bit about Buddhism that we were talking before, your mind is clutter. There's like, it's if you actually like realize in your head like how is your mind is like in fucking clouds and you cannot see properly. So dude, fuck yeah. That hit me right now. That hit me.
I wanna comment on both things. So, and let's start with what Adriano was saying. I think from what I read about the Jonah Complex from Abraham Maslow's approach, I think what you were suffering from, and I think we're all victims of that, is there is this fear of responsibility, but there is also the fear of inadequacy. So you're fearing that you're gonna be that person that you want to reach, but then it's not gonna match the possibilities that you have in mind. Like maybe you're not, okay, you're imagining a certain person, but then maybe you're not really that person. You have the self opinion, but you don't want to really challenge it. So you come up with these behaviors of just postponing or distracting yourself from other work rather than doing the actual work that's gonna help you get there.
Yeah,
And
procrastinating. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
it's very similar to imposter syndrome, and I think these are all forms of self-sabotage. I think our brain is just brilliant with coming up with excuses for us to just sabotage us from doing what we want, and I think that's why self-awareness is very important. And I think that's why we're also doing this podcast, because it's not that we're only helping people learn about these topics, but we're also learning a lot about ourselves during this process of doing the podcast. About what Aslan said, and while I'm saying about what Aslan said, I'm trying to remember what Aslan said so I can comment on it, because I had
Which
the comment.
one?
Oh yeah, limitations.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, this one. I really like the idea, and I think it's very healthy to push yourself to the limits, to only understand your limits, and then, okay, I know where my limits are, and I'm just not gonna surpass them. Because when you don't know your limits, you just keep pushing until it becomes very, very unhealthy. If you're at least aware that you're pushing to understand your limits, at some point it becomes your line. You know where you can push and where you just need to say, okay, stop. And I personally, it happened to me as well. I don't know if I mentioned this in the previous episode, but when I was very, very self-obsessed about learning and working, waking up at 5 a.m., going to work, going to the gym, studying, at some point I just reached my limit that I spent 3 months afterwards not doing anything, just because I reached my limits. And I hope you're not going to reach that level, but it's good to understand your limits. Go, Adriano.
For me, it's usually like I think like for me, there's usually one big crash, and then I like 1 or 2 days like crash, and then I'm good to go like the day after.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That also happens to me.
it's very healthy though, guys. So
It is.
Yeah. And I have to say, when it comes to push your limits, I think one of the best experiences one can have is by doing physical extenuating exercise in a certain way. When you push your body to the limit, then you can see your mind's limit at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's a way of doing it. That's why for me, well, there's also an example.
David Goggins, man. Sorry. David Goggins.
Yeah, the GOAT, dude. Yeah, exactly him.
The man himself, dude. It's very. Yeah. Sorry that I distracted the conversation.
No.
This guy is just amazing
Insane.
in terms of how he just challenges his mental limitations. Like, this guy's mental strength, it's out of this world. Honestly, it's a huge inspiration for me.
Dude,
I would recommend his book Can't Hurt Me if you can.
Yeah,
give it
honestly, a must read. And I love how he actually interprets his mind as a governor in a car. You know, when you have a car and you're speeding up, there's always going to be a governor that is not going to allow you to reach a certain like speed limit or whatever. And he talks about like the mind, you yourself having a governor and being like, you have to break that motherfucker. You have to like go further because the body is resilient. When it comes to physical exercise, of course, we were talking about this. But it's also like a mental, like breaking your mental limit and capacity. It is actually, it is crazy, dude. It is crazy in those regards. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I wanted to take this opportunity also to, just because we're talking about like the different examples of what could be like fear of success. We read about like Forbes. They give these 10 reasons why you have fear of success. It will sound hopefully or not that hopefully familiar to many or all of us in a certain aspect, because at the end of the day, we're all human and our mind process works different for each one, but similar at the same time, which is fucking weird. But like, it's like what you said before, the fear of losing yourself. That's a big one. That has happened like in my life as well in certain aspects. Then fear of backlash. When you want to do something and then you're like, yeah, but how is people going to react? I think I had this when doing this podcast. To be honest, when starting this project, I was a little bit afraid of.
I think me as well. Yeah. I agree.
How is people going to react to this project? Yeah. Are they going to be like, this is dope? Or they're going to be like, you three are morons. And you're like, You know what? Yeah, you know what I mean.
If I
And
can just have a minute to talk
yeah,
about
yeah,
my personal experience
of
from
course,
that
man.
sense,
Jump in. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I had two ideas that were challenging my mind. The first one is, okay, how people are going to perceive you, because, well, if I'm thinking about myself, for example, on Instagram, okay, I used to share pictures, that's photography, or not really you speaking about your own ideas. Okay, how are you going to be perceived? And the second idea was, who am I to even speak? Like, okay, what do I even know to just be in a podcast and have a conversation? And again, this song of another white boy with a podcast, you know. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, who am I to even speak? And I discovered during the self-sabotage research that I was just sabotaging myself, because again, we are all unique. We all have a certain value that we can deliver to people. And obviously, you don't have to have a podcast to deliver a certain value, but you need to find, again, your primal inclination. You need to find what you're good at and what you like, or what kind of value you can offer to the world, without challenging your thoughts, like, okay, who am I to do this, or who am I to be that person? And I think in my research about Abraham Maslow, he was also doing the same thing to his students. He used to ask them, okay, who's gonna be a writer, who's gonna be this type of writer? And then everyone is just, again, the conformity, the fear of death, or just conforming to society. Everyone is looking at each other, and no one is really able to stand out and say, okay, I'm gonna be this person, because everyone have this self-doubt. And just to mention a quick thing, and I don't know if you guys know Alex Hormozy, but he keeps talking about this research of the main three traits. They did this research to discover the main three traits of successful people, and they all have kind of low self-esteem, like self-doubt, like non-worthiness. I'm not worthy. Who am I to be that person? The second trait is they have like a God complex. They feel that they deserve what they want to reach. So imagine just having these two traits just conflicting each other. I'm not worthy. I'm doubting if I'm gonna be good at this thing, and I deserve to be that person. And the third trait is impulse control. But the first two traits are very interesting, because if you're doubting yourself, then you want to challenge yourself. He also has this quote: if you want to be self-confident, it doesn't come from affirmations. It comes from having an undeniable stack of proofs. Like, you need to go and work on projects to prove to yourself that, okay, I'm confident now because I have a track record of all these projects, for example. I took too long. Sorry, Adriano. You can
No,
keep going.
dude, I actually loved it because the third one was fear of not being good enough.
Okay,
So
it's aligned.
it just magically went aligned,
Alright.
and it was cool. So like, let's just recapitulate this
The
fear of
stars
losing
were
your.
aligning.
Yeah. Dude, like, let's recapitulate again. It's like the fear of losing yourself, fear of backlash, fear of not being good enough. Those are the first three. Then it will be fear of criticism, which is also another thing that you were like talking about in a second ago. Then like the fear of the spotlight, which is I think the one I explained a little bit about my life in a certain aspect. Well, the three of us, I think. Then it will be the fear of change, which I think this is a funny one because change is irrevocable and it's like it's gonna happen. There's no way you can stop change, and fearing change is a weird thing because like it's human nature to want to keep things as they are, but that's not nature though. You know, it is funny. It is very funny. Then it will be fear of losing your friends, which is like your friends are like a part of you that help you like navigating life in a certain aspect because they're like the ones that like even if you have like one or two friends, it doesn't matter. It's literally like that. They help you like just stand in society. You know what I mean? So this is an important one as well. It will be the eighth one will be fear of working nonstop. The ninth one will be fear of heightened expectations. Like the feeling of expecting something really, really fucking cool and maybe not reaching them. You know what I mean? And then the 10th one will be fear of feelings of excitement, which
Can you expand on that?
I believe what they mean with that is like when you start being afraid that you're gonna be excited for something because you like go into life like numb, you know, like nothing. Like when you're a kid and you see new things, you're excited all the time. You're like, oh my god, a tree! And then when it's like the 10,000 time you see a tree, you're like, ah, cool. You know what I mean? And
Ah,
then when
okay,
you're
okay, okay, got
yeah,
it.
when you're a grown up and you're like, I haven't had this fear for like sorry, this feeling for a long time now that you're feeling like shit, I'm excited for tomorrow, I cannot even sleep. You know, like it's like fearing this fear, fearing these feelings of being like, am I actually excited for something? Am I actually
Mm.
like I cannot wait for tomorrow or I cannot wait for 15 minutes from now because this is gonna be cool. You know, it's like, am I afraid of actually feeling something, of being like human in a certain aspect? And I loved the 10 of them. They're really intense at the same time. Um, and I believe in a certain aspect, all of us have actually felt this. In like personally, like I'm pretty sure the audience also. Um, so yeah, these are like the Forbes 10 reasons why you have fear of success. I actually just really quick as well, I'm gonna like rub the mic 2 seconds. I wanna talk about Julian himself in these regards of like why you have this type of fear of success. He's a guy like in the States that helps dudes like approach women in a healthy way, of course. And like I'm
A
gonna
dating
quote,
coach?
kind of, yeah. He's like a dating coach, something like that. He's actually a nice dude. I wanted to quote him in this because one of his talks, he explains where like people, of course, in his approach of like approaching to women, they feel like the fear of success is that you think you're chasing things and you think you're growing and evolving, but in reality, you're staying under this limit here, you know? And instead of moving forward, you fuck something up and then you spend your time fixing it and then you repeat the process, but you're never evolving. So there's like this limit that you're always at. This is the limit that your mind thinks this is the greatest that you can be without actually surpassing the limit and reaching success. So what he says is that literally you're like in this limit, almost reaching it, you're maybe about to surpass it, and then something in your mind, a behavior that you do, whatever, fucks things up. So you go back down. And then you work hard and you're like doing this effort to actually reach again the limit and you're about to surpass it. And then is a repeated behavior, another person, then you fuck it up again. And then this is a constant in your life. And this is why like you never like outreach your limit. You're always like dangling just a little bit below the limit that your mind has set up. Like, you know what I mean? And then like the reasons can be various, but the behavior is the same. It's like it's an illusion that because you're fucking things up, you're actually growing and evolving. You're just reaching back to the limit that you were before. And this is like a pattern that people need to break in a certain aspect. And that's when you guys, like, for example, said that you have to be aware of it because this is all subconsciously doing these type of things. You know, it's like, for example, an alcoholic. He's like 50, 60 days sober. And he's like, fuck yeah, like I'm doing this. But in his mind, he's like, no, man, you're not good enough for this. And then he just sees a bar, goes there, have a shot and fucks it up. Then he has to do all the work again to become again like 60 days sober, and the same thing happens. And this is like patterns in your mind that you have to work on it, you know, like individually, in community, whatever works out for you, to like break it. But I found it very interesting when you're talking about like awareness in this situation because it's difficult. It's a very fucking difficult subject to be aware of this type of behavior.
I think journaling might be one of the ways you can kind of notice those patterns. If you journal, then you can Well, you will reflect automatically kind of on things that are happening in your life. I think that could be one of the ways you can break from that pattern. I think for me, what might help, there are some things that are hard to measure, but having some kind of ways to tell yourself objectively if you're moving forward or not. I mean, I think this depends on obviously every person because someone might have a more distorted view of their life and someone might have a more objective view of their
Yeah.
life. And I think this depends on like plethora of different reasons why they might be in that situation. Could be the way they were raised, could be the experiences they've had in their life, um, could be many reasons. But I think having some kind of objective indicators from outside world where you're like, am I moving towards something or am I just kind of stuck in a loop in a way, right? Where you can tell whether or
Yeah.
not you're actually achieving what you want to achieve because, or even defining what you want to achieve because many people don't even define what they want to achieve to themselves. If you don't have a goal to move towards, then you're not really, it's much easier to mess up, if you don't know where you're going.
Dude, thank you. This is perfect, dude. I was following this guy that is his name is Dr. Marty Hauff. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his last name perfectly fine, but like he has a TED talk as well. If audience wants to listen to him, he's actually really cool. He says that the difference, like the reason of fear of success, is because the goals that you set them like they're like the last thing you have to do, and like it's not about reaching success. Success is a never-ending journey, not
Hmm.
a destination. So he's literally like,
Journey. Listen,
yeah,
Aslan.
yeah, man. So like it's like we have this idea that success is a destination, it's an objective we set out to accomplish, and the process of being successful is actually the process of achieving that goal. Success is more about the journey, because if it's a destination, then all we have in our path is failure.
Yeah, and even failure is a part of the process. You fail, and then you
Yeah.
improve whatever you're doing. You iterate, and you try to reach whatever you want to reach. And
But
going back to designing behaviors, that's why you need to have a minimum success rate. That's why you need to have small micro wins, and that's why you need to have a track record of proofs telling you, okay, you got this. You can reach whatever you want to reach, not unrealistically whatever you want to reach, but
yeah,
based on the data you have, on your skill set, on your talent, on your self-awareness. This is how the journey is like.
dude, because it works both ways, right? You're like setting this unrealistic goal, and you'll be like, I will not be successful until I reach this motherfucking goal. It's like, and all the work that you're doing, all the progress that you're doing, everything, all the effort, everything that you're actually working on, that's already a path of success, man. Like the
Mm.
journey that you're taking to reach this amazing thing that you have set in your mind is already successful enough. And then if you do not achieve it, then what? You know what I mean? Like that doesn't mean that you didn't evolve during this process, that you haven't grown as a human being, that you actually have not like met different type of expectations in your head.
Hmm.
And then if you reach it, then what? What's after that?
I
That is
think at
there something else?
I think at some point it just becomes clear that you have to go through simply painful events to learn and to understand more about yourself. Like the thing about limitations. Okay, you need to reach your limits, you crash, and then you're like, okay, I know what happened now. I'm gonna learn from this, and I'm not gonna try to surpass my limitations. It's the same thing with a project that you're working on. It's the same thing with your mental strength. Whatever you wanna achieve, you know that you're gonna go through some painful events. You're gonna fail. You're not gonna be good from the beginning. It's like, okay, are you good at playing guitar? No, no, it's not my thing. But did you even try it? Did you even play it? Because we are all have this we all have this fear of just starting. That's
Yeah.
another type of excuse. I'm just not interested in music. Yeah, but how do you know? Did you even try?
Yeah. You have to have the courage to look ridiculous,
Yeah,
in someone else's eyes, and more important, in your own eyes.
yeah, and
And that's
just to
like,
be brave to fuck up, because
yeah,
you're gonna suck in the beginning.
Yeah,
in
and
anything, literally.
that's the commonality between fear of success and fear of failure in a certain aspect, that you're afraid to start because you're afraid of being good or you're afraid of sucking at it. But
Mm.
the start is the issue. Like dude, there's this beautiful like letter from Sol Lewitt that he wrote in 1965 to his good friend Eva Hesse, which he was having like a lot of issues with, like the fear of success, the fear of like doing stuff like, of like, I don't think I'm ready. I don't think I'm the right one for this job. I don't think that I can do this shit. And literally, it's like a short string of words, a little piece of advice to stop overthinking, worrying, looking over your shoulders, having this fear. And it's literally in his beautiful letter, he said, stop it and just do. If you fear, make it work for you. That's
Yeah.
it. And
Nailed.
do this. It's beautiful because like it's like the fear of actually achieving greatness doesn't allow you to just fucking start. And sometimes the only thing that you need to do is just keep moving forward. Just move something. It doesn't matter if you're crawling, if you're like walking, running, or flying. Do it. Just do it. Like this is like one of the things we had, I think, with this podcast in the beginning, because we're like having these discussions of how to start and whatever. And then I think Mehdi was the one that like, dudes, maybe we should just fucking start, and we'll figure it out along the way. And it's like, yeah, actually, yeah, dude, yes. Like you have to just do it. And then like there's also this quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, who is like a billionaire, and he's like amazing entrepreneur, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys may know him. He says, defeats more people than any other one thing in the world: fear. Literally, fear of like starting something, of being someone, of doing like or following whatever. It's fear. And then like it's like this impulse that we have like by nature, maybe an instinct you may call it, that if you fear something over there, the first like instinct that you do is turn around and run away. But like when it comes to life, like, well, as you've been saying, Mehdi, that there's like the fear of death and the fear of life. When it comes to life, you have to go where fear is, because where fear is where the growth is where like the most change will come to you, is where like you're actually gonna reach something, be worthy of something, like whatever that may be. It doesn't matter what you do, it's how you do it, right? Like it's fuck. Yeah, man, this has been
I mean,
therapy, dude.
at some point, it doesn't matter how you do it. Just do it. I would say, like
Yeah,
just do it, and you're gonna learn how to do it afterwards. You just need to start. So I think that's the main obstacle, and that's very interesting because when we put the first episode live, the episode about self-sabotage, I received this feedback from this friend of mine, and she was like, yeah, I like the whole conversation about how you explain self-sabotage, the different attitudes, but you didn't spend that much time on how to overcome self-sabotage. And I thought about it. I checked the episode and I was like, okay, people are normally looking for either shortcuts or a model that they need to follow. Because in all the books that I read, for example, about self-sabotage, and I'm looking now at the Laws of Human Nature that I'm rereading now, Robert Greene talks about changing the lens by which you see life and by which you see people, and changing your attitudes without changing your circumstances, for example. He talks about being self-aware. I think that's how you overcome anything. Okay, I have this fear of success. I have this fear of being responsible. Okay, let me just start working on small projects, test how I can be responsible for them, and then again have this undeniable proof that I can be actually responsible. It's a matter of doing and self-awareness. That's how I see it.
Yeah, and I think for people who have been, there's one thing is the fear of starting something or doing something that you haven't done, or a fear of messing up because you have a bad track record of messing up or something. That can also happen. And I think in that case, it's again your mind playing with you, because first of all, you could think, okay, what is it that I'm doing right now? Is this similar to what I've done in the past? Because your mind can think that it's exactly the same thing because it's kind of similar. There's some similar element. Let's say podcasting. Let's say you've tried to start a podcast before and now you're doing it again. And now you can think, oh, you're gonna unconsciously look for evidence that it's not working out.
Yeah.
And you're gonna stop doing it, or you're gonna find a way to self-sabotage yourself because you think in the past I've somehow messed it up, so I'm not doing something right, and then you're kind of lost. And I think in that case, and I don't know, obviously, because we've been kind of thinking a lot about people who are just do it, but what if you've already tried, like what if you tried and you've done it and you're kind of like, fuck, and I think in that case, what could be good is first to just write it down or find a way to visualize this to yourself. Is this exactly the same thing that you've been doing, or are you just equating this in your mind? Because your mind can do this. It could be like, okay, let's say you've started a podcast before, but you haven't put as much effort. You haven't done, like, I don't know, you haven't made a good social media account, or you haven't done something that you're doing now. That it might just take time for you to get an audience or improve the podcast, right? So I'm just using podcast as an example. It could be anything. But another thing is that's something that I've read in the book Culture Code, and that's something that I think it's mainly applicable to if you're working in a team of people, and the book is about why certain teams are successful and certain companies are successful and others aren't. And one of the things that the successful ones do is they always, whatever they're doing, at the end of it, they're going to have a session where they write down what went wrong, what went well, and really discuss it. Like, what can they improve for the future?
Right?
Yeah. And it's kind of hard work in a way, because a lot of people, as you said, Mehdi, they look for quick solutions to things, but at the end of the day, you have to just, if you really want to improve, you have to have this process for yourself as well, not just if you're in a team, but okay, sit down and I'm doing this project or whatever, right? What went well, what went wrong, where did I mess up, how can I improve in the future? And that process can help you to actually not just be stuck in a circle, but become aware of areas where you're messing up and then break through. Right. So, and then you become more aware of yourself, more aware of where can I improve my personality, literally, right? My behavior. So,
There are two different things that you talked about, and I want to comment on both of them. The first one is, if people are doing, like, if they have a bad track record of things that they've been doing, maybe it's the sunk cost fallacy. Maybe they've been doing the same thing over and over, and they keep pushing for something that maybe it's not for them. Again, what you mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, they need to reassess and know, okay, if this is what brings them meaning or not, is this their objective or not. They need to assess that. The second thing that you said, and you brought up the podcast, so it got a bit personal, and I was thinking about it the whole time. But I just want to say that it's not easy. It's not easy. Like, I do the post-production of the episodes, and I look at myself sometimes and I'm like, you messed up, or you're using a lot of filler words, or again, this went wrong. But then, okay, you're improving. You're doing this because you love it. You want to reach this greatness, and it comes with an expense of having a lot of fuck-ups in the beginning. I want to improve my communication skills. I want to improve my knowledge. So, fuck it, let be it. If someone looks at it and they're like, okay, these guys are just, I don't know, they don't know what they're talking about, it's fine, dude, just say it, it's fine. But we're trying to improve because we have this objective. And in the beginning, I was so worried about criticism. I think now, if I have content, I would just put it. I don't care. I just want to put content out there, just because I believe that, first of all, there is value from this conversation that we're having. Second of all, is because I enjoy it now. And because I get to assess, I get to define the fuck ups, and I get to work on them. And we're getting better in podcasts and
Yeah.
after every episode. So
Do,
yeah,
I,
it's not easy. Just to acknowledge that it's a hard process.
and also, I just want to add something with the things you just said, and also for our viewers, is that you know what the definition of insanity is? Is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And
Nailed.
this, the first time I heard it, it hit me hard because people are used of like when you said before, like I have already tried, but I failed. Yeah, try differently. It's like doing the same shit over and over and then being like, why I'm not reaching what I'm reaching? This is worthless. Like, nah, fuck it. Like, I'm not good enough. It's like, maybe the way that you're doing things is not the proper way that you should do things. You also, it doesn't matter how many books you read and everything. The whole idea of a book is grabbing the ideas of someone else that actually worked for it and applying to your own life. That doesn't mean that exactly word by word of what they're saying, it will work for you. It might work, it might not. That's life. Like, it is what it is. You just have to keep working, keep moving forward, keep trying different things. Like, if you have fear, good, man. Enjoy it, feel it. It's a human feeling at the end of the day. Like, work on it. They say, like, to be like a dangerous individual, you have to learn how to live with fear. And that doesn't mean like going into like a war zone or anything like that. I meant it like being in a dangerous individual that nobody can stop you, because when you're used to this fear of this feeling of being afraid and still like being like, I still want to do this, I still need to do this, I still want to like work on this, then it's like, where's the wall in front of your path? Like in a stoic approach, like approach view, or however you said it, is the problem becomes the path.
What stands in the way becomes the way.
What stands in the way becomes the way. Exactly. And
I
if fear is standing in the way, fear is the way.
Yeah. I was just thinking about something at the same time, and I was like, okay, with this fear, with this struggle, and this difficult process, I feel that it sets you free afterwards. Because you just don't fear the same thing anymore. Like, I'm not fearing putting my face on YouTube now. Just because, okay, I've done it. And it was not that bad.
Yeah.
And I used to imagine that it's gonna be... Like, the fear that I had before is just so big. Because that's the thing about it. We just imagine stuff. Once we experience it, we're like, it's fine. And that's why it's good to have a fear checklist and just clear a bit your mental space, because you're worrying about too many things once you really experience them, or you consider them, or you think about, okay, why is it even taking some space from my mental clarity? And then you just do it, and then it sets you free. I think it's a very good outcome, even if the result itself, like, okay, you share a video, people don't like it, but at least you reduce this fear of putting content, for example, and that's gonna help you improve.
Yeah.
I wanted to add something because I just thought about this. It's, well, not super related, but I'm glad we've like picked up the podcast again, because we've had like a kind of a break in the
true.
After the last episode, and it feels good to be doing this again.
Yeah.
It's a very good conversation.
Dude, I said before, like, honestly, this episode for me, I think it has been therapy, so thank you.
For sure, same. I think same, honestly. Yeah, it's been super, super nice. And I hope that people find this, our listeners find this interesting as well. One thing that I've also been thinking about, Mehdi, as you were talking about how you were like afraid and thinking like, should I do this or not, and all the fears and perceptions that you have in your head. I think, I just want to acknowledge all the people who've shown support so far, with all, like, a lot of them your friends who have shown this immense amount of support, which is freaking amazing. Like some of the your friends and my friends and Adriano, it's been kind of, yeah, it's been a bit like overwhelming as well. You know, some of the feedbacks are so in depth and so like um, sincere. It's been yeah, it's been crazy, and I think so far everything kind of tells me that we're on the right track. Like we're doing good. And I like one thing also, you know, just to show the perspective difference is I've been talking to one of my friends and she told me that, you know, it's crazy what you're doing with the podcast. Like I would be so intimidated, you know, when it comes to content, you know. And
Mm.
I just like was like, yeah, it's hard making the making the posts for Instagram and designing. She's like, no, not that, but like the actual things you talk about, it's like
Mm.
so complicated and like I would be completely
It's challenging, and I like it because
yeah,
it challenges us to actually like do our things
yeah,
better and deeper.
yeah,
Because like, yeah, you know what fear of success is. Yeah, but
yeah.
you know, like examine yourself
Mm-hmm.
now. Like, go and talk about it in a camera and be like, "Fuck, man."
Yeah.
You know, like what I thought I believed it is, but it's more than that. And then you start like thinking about like, you know, I've actually been aware of this type of feeling before. Is it actually this?
Mm-hmm.
And then you like start reading and like, you know, like start like having conversations with you two guys, and you're like, dude, it hit me. And
Yeah.
like
Mm.
all of a sudden,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I want to also thank everyone who showed support or sent us feedbacks. It's been very overwhelming, and it feels good because we're getting this much support, and yeah, we're gonna address the topics that you want to be discussed, and I don't want to shout out any name because I'm gonna miss many others. So maybe we can have a Q&A or shout out session to just thank everyone for sharing the podcast or for listening, for showing support. It's been very good to see all people's feedbacks.
For sure.
Yeah, actually, yeah. It's been very motivating.
I'm just noticing one thing. I think Adriano was the only person who's constantly not constant with us in the podcast with changing hairstyles and looks.
I'm actually growing my hair, guys, so hopefully, and it's hot here in Barcelona. Oh, well, I'm not gonna say anything about where you are, man. But Jesus Christ, so like the beard is not working for me right now. When winter comes, I'm gonna become a vagabond one more time, man. That's the way the cookie crumbles.
Are we getting paid for the ad you're doing for
It would be
Coca-Cola?
nice, right?
Yeah.
Coca-Cola. I do drink you once in a while.
All right. Good stuff, guys.
Right? And also thank you guys. Like thank everyone watching, and thank you, both of you.
Yeah.
Appreciate you a lot.
Thank
Good
you
stuff.
all. Again, find all of our videos on YouTube, the Human Library Podcast. We are also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And yeah, show support. Tell us the topics that you want us to discuss. And hopefully this is bringing value to your lives.
Yeah. And more cool things are coming. Always, we're always thinking to add something. It's always evolving. So, yeah, we'll see where it goes. It's pretty exciting.
Good stuff. Thank you, guys.
Yay.